Hi, welcome to Mark D. Maker. My name is Mark Taylor. Today I'm going to be showing you about knives, possibly your first carving knife. I'll show you blades, blade size, handles, and decent places to buy a knife that you can count on. We'll go from the low end all the way up to some really nice knives. Come on, I'll show you. All right, we got several different types of knives here, and some palm chisels here. I'm gonna start with the knives first. My very first knife I ever carved with was an old-timer pocket knife. And I can't tell you how many times that thing is closed on the back of my hand. I still have a scar here from it. I would not recommend using a pocket knife that folds, that does not have a lock. The blade is really too long. That blade's really too long, and there's just nothing to stop it from closing on your hand. So nice, it's a nice pocket knife, but not for wood carving. A nice portable wood carving knife would be one of these little guys, and it unscrews, and there's different knife blades inside the handle. Goes in like so. There we go. So you can have different type of blades. These are really preferred, these curved blades for carving animals or birds that have a natural roundness to them. And when you're done, the blades come off and they go back into the handle. You can also get separate blades for these, and these blades, that's just a straight blade, but that is a spoon carving blade, and we'll be doing the spoon carving, and I'll show you how to use this curved blade. But it's a nice option to have, a spoon carving blade. Now, all my small carvings are all done with an X-Acto knife, which is just that's a $4 X-Acto knife. This is maybe an $8 one. This has a rubber coating on it that makes it just a little nicer to hold. The only thing I really do is soften the back edge of this with some sandpaper, because you get right up behind the blade and push, and just to eliminate any kind of burrs or anything there. When the blade gets dull, you just change the blade, and you don't have to worry about sharpening. Sharpening is something that I'll get into later. There's so many different ways of sharpening. Everybody has their own opinion on how to sharpen, and so I'll get into that in another video. We will touch on stropping with a leather strop, because even with an X-Acto knife, it helps to strop occasionally. This is one of my favorite knives. I bought it at a wood carving show, and you can see how little the blade is there. That's all you need. You don't need a big hunking blade. That is all you need to do a decent carving. This feels really nice in the hand. So if you're carving for a long time, you want something that feels really good. These are flex cut knives, and these are readily available at Woodcraft. Woodcraft sells these. You can get them on Amazon. They're reasonably priced. They're a decent knife for the beginner. It really is a nice cutting knife. Here's one with a little bit bigger blade. I would use that for more roughing out stuff. And then when you get down to the details, the smaller blade. Now, these are some real inexpensive carving knives. I've had this one for probably 20 years. When I moved from carving with my pocket knife to this knife, it made a big difference in the quality of my carving. And you can get these for 19, 20 bucks. Mostly, I believe they're either Swiss made or German made, but decent steel on it, nothing fancy. This is what that one used to look like, but from sharpening, it's taken it down in size. This one is designed for detail. It's got a very sharp point on it, so you can get into real detailed areas. These are some knives that I picked up at a wood show. These were made by one of the people that belong to the Northern Virginia wood carvers. He machined these, and also, while selling those, sold honing compound for strops. This is Yellowstone. That works out really well. The Yellowstone does. The green too. The green removes metal, and it does it pretty quickly. I'll touch on the palm chisels really quick, just for a moment. Palm chisels were not meant to be used with a mallet. They're meant to be used with the hand. So, like so, there's bracing that you do so you don't, this thing doesn't go flying. You always want to build a bridge, have stable control. These little palm gouges have proved themselves very useful. Most of the sets come with this skew. This is a V gouge. I probably use this. This is probably the second most used. A V gouge will give you a real crisp V line, and a lot of times if I'm doing a carving or just want to put in a line, nice tool. This is a sweep. This gouge has almost like a spoon-like configuration to it. That's used a lot for removing wood. Flat chisel. This flat chisel with the bend for getting into tight spots. All right, let's take a look at the strop. Now, all the strop is a piece of leather that's been glued onto a board. So you want a nice flat board and a piece of leather, and then you rub jeweler's rouge or a polishing compound, a metal polishing compound, into the leather, and that's called a strop. And the way a strop is used, so that would be cutting, so you're going to be going backwards because you don't want to cut the leather. So the blade goes down and you want to get it as flat as possible, and you just push it, and coming back this way, lay it down flat and pull it. Now, depending on the blade itself, if the bevel is steep enough, you'll need to turn a little bit of a bevel onto your stropping. So you'll have to calculate that. But I've had pretty good luck just laying it flat, and it does several things. One, it polishes the metal, so when it cuts through the wood, it will literally leave a clean, polished. You almost get like a little shine off of that. It's polished. If this is sharp and this is polished, it'll do a really nice job. And I'm telling you, if you're just whittling or carving, it is a very enjoyable experience to have a sharp, polished knife and to be able to carve effortlessly. It's the best feeling that you can imagine. So I would pull it across your strop in the opposite direction of the blade about 10 times and take it back the other way. Now you can carve for 15 to maybe 30 minutes before you need to strop again. A really good test is to come across the end grain. Now if you saw my other video, you heard me say end grain's tough to cut because it's like the tips of all these straws. Imagine a broom and all those tips are sticking up. It would be very difficult to cut. But a sharp polished knife, you'll be able to cut them like so, and it almost leaves a polished look to it as well. Not as much as on the sides here, but it's a pretty sharp knife to be able to cut the end grain like that. Now a helpful tip when you go to put your compound onto the leather, so you just take a piece of leather and glue it to a board. I usually put the smooth side down, rough side up, so the rough side will hold the compound. In this case, you would just sprinkle it on because it's a powder, and then you would take a knife or anything, I mean smooth, and just push it into the leather. And if you're using a knife, you'll see these black marks appear. That's steel. That's removing steel from this, and it's embedding into that. By making the leather wet, that works. That helps to hold the powder in place as you strop it into the leather. The green that I use is usually in a block form. And what I do is I take a hair dryer and heat it up because there's a wax that holds the compound together, and rub that into the leather, and the heat really helps soften it, and it applies much better, much easier. In strops like this one, and this is probably one of the best strops I've ever had. Let's see. When I bought this strop, I only paid $22 for it. Got it off of Amazon from these people. And they're really worth looking into. A very nice strop. And when this gets clogged with metal filings, you just take a little olive oil and rub into it, and it's like a new surface appears. I'm not exactly sure how that works, but it works. And it's, like I say, one of the best strops I've ever had. I've made all of them up until this one, and now I'm a believer in that one. For the beginner in sharpening, and like I say, I'm really not going to get into sharpening on this except for one of those things. For the beginner, I would get one of those, and it's one of those you just pull it through 10, 15 times, and it'll give you a nice, straight, sharp edge. Strop it 10 or so times, back and forth, even pressure, and you're going to have a really nice edge. And we'll get into carving later. Like I said, we'll cover that in more detail. Now I also, if I'm running low on razor blades for my number 11 X-Acto blade, that's what that is, a number 11 X-Acto blade, you can strop these, and they actually work better, they perform better if you strop them. Now I don't know if you can see that, but see this area right here? That blade, the very sharp, or the very cutting edge, has rolled over that way, and it's leaving a mark here. And that's the purpose of stropping, is to get rid of that and bring that edge back to where it's lining up right in the center, to where it's polished, and we'll cut through the wood smoothly without crushing any wood fibers. This is a wood carving supply company that I've often ordered from. I'm very satisfied with their service. I just want to show you some of the knives that they have in here. Here's some of the beginner blades that I was telling you about. Some carving gloves for the people that don't want to cut themselves. And here's some real high-end knives. These are very nice knives. I do not own one of these, but they are in my future somewhere. And here's some more flex cut knives. And here's some flex carve sets. And here's the chip carving knives. Chip carving is carving a flat board and giving it a three-dimensional type of look out of a flat board. Here are some locking pocket knives for carvers, specifically designed for carvers. There's some micro chisels, really tiny ends on them. We got some more knives. And there's a knife strop, a set. These are for to put on a grinder wheel. FlexCut makes this strop specifically for their knives, but they have some really nice angles and curves in there for stropping V knives and V gouges and such. They're worth taking a look at. Here's some knives like I was showing you that have the multiple blades in one knife. It's a nice option. And this is a scalpel. I do happen to have a scalpel that I use from time to time. It was inexpensive, sharp, but I still strop it. So this is a strop sold by FlexCut, and it will do a gouge on that side. There's a nice big flat leather spot that you can load up with compound and do flat blades. And you've got all these radiuses for different things. like that V gouge that I showed you over here. If I wanted to sharpen it, right there, this V gouge. This would be more of the sweeping gouge, and the way they work is you just pull them right across like so. And they go all the way down to real tiny, like a micro size. So very handy. It's definitely worth the price. Another thing that you can do is take a piece of wood and cut these shapes into it with the chisel or gouge, because it is that shape. So you could make that shape, cutting it, rub some compound onto it, and get it nice and sharp. Now if you strop it often, you won't have to sharpen it on a stone hardly ever. I strop my knives and my chisels often, and I rarely have to put it on a stone. And a carving glove. A knife will not cut through this glove. Now it will poke straight in. If you poke straight in, ouch. But to slice across it, which is the biggest danger, it won't cut.
If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.